The grass lay pressed flat around the cub, bent by his small weight and the night's passing damp. His body did not rise the way it should. Each breath came shallow and uneven, barely moving the pale fur along his ribs. Insects gathered and scattered again, confused by the stillness. Somewhere farther off, adult lions called once, then fell quiet, the sound thinning into distance. The cub's ears twitched without strength, his head resting where it had dropped, eyes half open and unfocused, reflecting light without tracking it. The people who found him did not rush. They slowed as they came near, reading the signs written in the grass and soil. There were no fresh tracks circling him, no protective pacing, no warning sounds. Only the faint, irregular movement of breath told them he was still alive. One knelt, keeping space, letting his presence settle before reaching out. The cub's body responded with a weak shudder, a low sound escaping his throat, more air than voice. Hands moved carefully, lifting just enough to free his chest from the pressure of the ground. The cub's legs dangled without resistance, thin and light, the weight of hunger already shaping his frame. His heartbeat fluttered under touch, fast and fragile. A quiet murmur followed, barely audible, meant more for steadiness than instruction. "It's okay," someone said, the words carried low and slow, then allowed to fade. They wrapped him to preserve warmth, not tight, not restraining. The cub did not fight. His body yielded, exhaustion overriding instinct. His mouth opened once, a reflex searching for something that was no longer there. Milk had dried on his whiskers, a sign of how recently he had been fed, and how abruptly that care had ended. The absence around him felt larger than the space he occupied. As they moved, the land shifted subtly, grass giving way to packed earth. The cub's breathing grew more audible, still uneven but present. His eyes closed, then opened again, responding to movement and shadow. A thumb brushed gently along his shoulder, feeling the bones beneath fur, noting the tremor that ran through him and settled. The people spoke little, listening more than directing, adjusting their pace to his fragile rhythm. There was no attempt to search for what was already lost. The tracks were too old, the silence too complete. Whatever had happened had unfolded beyond reach, leaving only this small body behind. The knowledge sat heavy but unspoken. Their task was narrowed now to what remained possible, not what might have been. When fluid touched his tongue, the cub stirred. His jaw worked weakly, a few shallow swallows taken before fatigue claimed him again. A hand steadied his head, supporting without forcing. "Easy," came a second soft line, almost swallowed by the wind. His breathing steadied for a moment, then wavered, then steadied again. Time stretched, measured in small changes. The cub's chest lifted a little higher. His paws curled inward, claws flexing once, then relaxing. He made a thin sound, brief and fading, and the people paused, waiting, letting his body decide its next move. The grass around them stirred as air passed through, carrying distant scents of earth and animals unseen. As light shifted toward afternoon, warmth settled across the plain. The cub lay wrapped in quiet, no longer alone but not yet safe, suspended between what he had lost and what he might still reach. In the distance, the wind moved the tall grass in slow waves, and somewhere beyond sight, life continued, indifferent and constant, while this small breath held on. For a little while. The space where the cub was placed held a careful stillness. He lay where the ground was clean and dry, surrounded by quiet movement and deliberate restraint. His body remained small within the open area, ribs rising and falling with effort, each breath audible in the pauses between human motion. The silence he carried with him seemed to widen the room, filling corners and lingering after footsteps passed. Nothing about him demanded attention, yet everything drew toward his fragility. He did not lift his head. His eyes stayed mostly closed, lids fluttering only when touched by sound or shifting air. When hands came near, they moved slowly, never directly above him, allowing him to register presence without fear. His ears twitched faintly, responding without energy. The warmth beneath him steadied his shaking, though it did not stop it. Hunger sat visibly in his frame, shaping his narrow shoulders and thinning his flanks, but it was the exhaustion that weighed most heavily, pressing him back into the ground. The people nearby spoke little. Their movements were measured, shaped by patience rather than urgency. They knelt, adjusted cloth, monitored breath, then stepped back again. The cub's mouth opened once, a small sound slipping out, quiet and incomplete. A hand rested briefly along his side, feeling for rhythm, then withdrew. "You're safe," someone said, the words barely above breath, not meant to instruct or reassure, only to exist alongside him. Beyond the immediate circle, life continued in small, ordinary ways. A bird landed, watched, and lifted off again. The wind moved dust along the edges of the space, tracing slow paths that caught light and faded. It was during one of these moments, when nothing else shifted, that the cat appeared. She did not approach directly. She lingered at a distance, body low, tail still. Her coat blended easily with the surroundings, her presence more sensed than seen. She watched without intensity, eyes steady, posture loose but attentive. This was not hunting behavior, nor curiosity sharpened by food. She remained where she was, observing, as though waiting for something to declare itself. The cub stirred faintly, a ripple passing through his side as he adjusted his weight. The cat's ears angled forward. She did not advance. Instead, she settled, folding her legs beneath her body, gaze never leaving him. Time passed without change, measured only by breath and light. When the cub's breathing grew uneven again, a soft sound escaping his throat, the cat shifted. She rose and took a single step closer, then stopped. Her tail moved once, slow and deliberate, brushing the ground. There was no tension in her frame, no readiness to flee or engage. She simply remained, present in a way that did not intrude. The people noticed her but did not intervene. They observed the way she positioned herself, the careful distance she kept. The cat's attention never wavered. She did not blink often. Her body mirrored stillness, a quiet balance between awareness and rest. The cub's head lifted a fraction, then fell back. His eyes opened briefly, unfocused, catching shapes without meaning. The cat lowered herself again, matching his level, her breathing calm and even. In that shared space, something settled, not recognition or understanding, but a pause. A slowing. As light shifted across the ground, the cub's breath steadied once more. The cat remained until shadows lengthened, until the air cooled and movement resumed around them. When she finally stood and turned away, she did so without hurry, leaving behind only the faint impression of warmth where she had been. The cub lay quiet, still fragile, but no longer surrounded by silence alone. The days unfolded quietly, marked less by progress than by observation. The cub remained weak, his body slow to respond to care. Food was offered gently and often, warmed and placed close enough to reach without effort. Most times he turned his head away. His mouth opened once or twice, then closed again, jaw tightening with fatigue rather than refusal. Hunger lingered, but something deeper held him still, a heaviness that pressed him down whenever he tried to lift himself toward it. At night the quiet changed. The cub's breathing grew uneven, and small sounds slipped out of him, thin and searching. They were not calls meant to summon, only reflexive expressions of need escaping a body too tired to contain them. The space answered softly, with wind against the walls, with distant movement, with nothing that reached him directly. It was during these hours that the cat returned. She came without announcement, stepping into the dim light and settling near him as though the distance had already been measured. She did not touch him at first. She lay alongside, close enough for warmth to gather, far enough to leave space. Her breathing was steady, unbroken by the cub's small, restless sounds. When he shifted, she adjusted, her body responding without urgency. The cub's cries softened in her presence. They did not stop, but they changed, losing their sharpness, stretching into quieter sounds that faded more quickly. His body curved slightly toward the heap beside him, a small movement that required effort. The cat remained still, allowing him to settle without resistance. In the low light, their outlines blurred, two shapes sharing the same patch of warmth. During the day she lingered nearby. Sometimes she watched from a distance, sometimes closer, her posture loose and unthreatening. When people approached, she did not retreat far, only enough to maintain calm. Her eyes followed the cub's movements, tracking the rise and fall of his chest, the slight tremor that ran through his legs when he tried to shift his weight. On one morning, after another night of rest broken by soft sounds, the cub accepted a few swallows. His tongue moved slowly, unevenly, but the motion held. A hand steadied the bowl, careful not to rush him. The cat sat a short distance away, watching, tail curled neatly around her body. When the cub stopped, she did not move, as if waiting for the moment to fully pass. The pattern repeated. Progress came in fragments, not days. A longer stretch of sleep. A cry that ended sooner. A breath that steadied more quickly after effort. The cat remained through it all, sometimes pressing closer when the cub shivered, sometimes shifting away when he stirred, her presence adapting without demand. One night, when the cub's cries rose sharper than before, a quiet human voice broke the dark. "Easy," it said, barely sound at all. A hand rested briefly on his back, then withdrew. The cat moved closer, her side touching his, her warmth immediate. The cub's body leaned into it, his breathing slowing as his energy drained away. There was no sudden change, No clear moment when the edge receded. Only a gradual pulling back, guided by repetition and presence. The cub's eyes opened more often. His head lifted a little higher. His cries softened, then grew less frequent, replaced by long, quiet stretches of rest. As the days lengthened, light shifting gently across the ground, the cub lay with his body curved toward the cat, his breath slow and steady. Outside, the wind moved through grass and leaves, carrying distant sounds of a world waiting. Inside the shared space, warmth lingered, and for now it was enough. Movement returned in small, uncertain pieces. The cub no longer stayed pressed to the ground for hours at a time. He pushed up on his front legs first, paws splaying slightly as his weight shifted forward, then settling back when the effort drained him. Each attempt left him breathing harder, chest fluttering, but the pause afterward shortened. Strength gathered slowly, almost invisibly in the spaces between rest and effort. The cat noticed before anyone else. When the cub lifted himself, she rose as well, remaining close without hovering. She walked a short distance, stopped, and waited. Her posture was loose, inviting without insistence. The cub watched her, head tilted, ears angling forward. After a moment, he tried again, this time bringing his back legs beneath him. He stood unsteadily, swayed, then took a single step before dropping back down. The cat did not move. She only sat and watched, her presence steady, unchanged. Over the next days the steps multiplied. The cub followed her in short bursts, his movements awkward but determined. He stumbled often, legs crossing, paws landing too far apart. Each fall ended quickly, his body learning the ground, learning how to rise again. When he grew tired, he stopped where he was, and the cat stopped too, lowering herself nearby, waiting for his breathing to slow. Play arrived quietly. It did not burst into the space with energy, but crept in through small gestures. The cub reached out once, paw brushing the cat's tail as it moved past. She paused, turned her head, and flicked it gently away. The cub tried again, clumsier this time, his paw landing against her side. She responded with a slow, careful movement, stepping just out of reach, then stopping. The cub followed, ears forward, body low, his movements lighter than before. The people watched from a distance. They did not interrupt, did not redirect. What they saw was not instruction or training, but something unfolding on its own terms. The cat did not correct him, did not teach in any visible way. She simply existed alongside him, setting a rhythm through her calm, through her consistency. When he moved too fast and tired himself, she lay down. When he rested, she rested. When he rose again, she stood. Food became easier. The cub approached it on his own now, guided less by hands and more by habit. He ate slowly, pausing often, but returned after each break. The cat sometimes sat nearby during these moments, sometimes wandered just beyond the edge of sight. Her absence did not distress him the way it once might have. Her presence had done its work quietly, leaving behind something internal and steady. One afternoon, as the cub followed her across the space with more confidence than before, a soft human voice carried over the air. "Look at him," it said, not loud enough to disturb the moment. The words settled and faded, leaving the movement uninterrupted. What reshaped the understanding of those watching was not the cub's recovery alone, but the manner of it. Care had come not only through measured feeding and careful monitoring, but through proximity, patience, and shared silence. The cat had offered no milk, no protection from the world beyond. She had offered warmth, predictability, and a presence that did not ask anything in return. The cub now stood with his body aligned, head higher, eyes clearer. He followed her not because he believed her to be his own kind, but because her movements made sense to him. They were calm. They were safe. In following her, he learned how to move through the day again. As light softened toward evening, the cat settled beneath a low stretch of shade, and the cub lowered himself beside her, close but not pressed. The air moved gently around them, stirring dust and grass beyond the boundary of the space. Together, they rested, two forms aligned by circumstance rather than instinct, while the quiet continued its slow, steady work. The moment arrived without ceremony. There was no clear signal that marked it as different from the days before, only a subtle shift in readiness that everyone felt at once. The cub moved with steadier purpose now, his steps sure, his body carrying its weight without hesitation. His breath no longer caught after short distances. He paused less often, rested less heavily. The fragility that once defined him had loosened its hold. The people prepared quietly. Their movements stayed slow, familiar, careful not to introduce urgency where none was needed. They allowed space, stepping back as much as they stepped forward. The cub watched them with calm attention, his head turning, ears tracking sound, eyes alert but untroubled. He did not search for the cat immediately. He moved as though the day were unfolding like any other. The cat remained where she always had. She sat a short distance away, body relaxed, tail resting loosely against the ground. Her eyes followed the cub, steady and unblinking. She did not rise when he passed near her, did not close the space between them. She observed without expectation, without movement that might draw him back. When the boundary opened and the wider land came into view, the cub paused. The air beyond carried unfamiliar currents, layered with distant scents and sounds that stirred something older and deeper within him. He lifted his head, nostrils flaring, reading the space ahead. His body leaned forward slightly, weight shifting toward what waited beyond. He took a few steps, stopped, then continued. The ground beneath his paws changed, firmer, less worn by repeated paths. With each step, his posture aligned more fully with his own shape, his movements smoothing into something instinctive and sure. He did not look back right away. The cat remained seated. Only her ears moved, tracking his progress as he went farther from her reach. She did not follow. She had never followed before, not truly. Her role had been one of stillness, of shared presence, not guidance into what came next. The people stood where they were, hands at their sides, breathing evenly. They did not speak. There was nothing to add to the moment, no sound that could improve it. They watched the cub cross into his own distance, his outline growing smaller against the open land. When he finally turned his head, it was not toward them, nor toward the cat, but toward the space ahead, where movement and life waited. The cat shifted then, rising slowly. She stood and watched as he continued, her body angled toward him, her gaze steady until his form blended into the tall grass. When he was no longer visible, she remained standing for a while longer, as if holding the shape of him in place. Then she sat again, the moment closing without effort. What lingered was not loss. It was something quieter. The understanding that care does not always announce itself, that connection can exist without possession, without permanence. The people felt it in the way they moved afterward, in the way they allowed silence to stay a little longer before breaking it. They had been witnesses, not authors, and the distinction mattered. The land absorbed the cub easily, the way it absorbs all things meant to belong to it. Grass bent and straightened again. Wind moved through the open space, carrying sound away. Somewhere beyond sight, the young lion stepped into a future shaped not only by survival, but by a calm, steady presence he no longer needed beside him. As the light softened toward evening, the cat lay down where she was, eyes half closed, body at rest. The air stirred gently, brushing past fur and grass alike. In the distance, something moved, unseen and continuing, while the quiet settled back into place.